As the dust or silt or swimmers settle on the government's announcement last week of its water standards targets, debate continues over its merits and its actual meaning and application. The government stands by it all. Farming groups say they can and will work with it, while environmental groups span a gamut from bewildered to somewhat underwhelmed. Fish and Game, for example, welcome the government's admission declining water standards are indeed a problem, but say the action is long overdue and will take too long to make a meaningful difference. That's Fish and Game. Meanwhile, the broad brushstrokes of national targets have left the odd waterway to spill through the cracks, like one coastal lake in South Canterbury. Now, while websites, etc. define it as anything but, Washdyke would be classified as swimmable under the new standards. And as you will see, and you can see behind me if you're watching, it certainly isn't. Our Christchurch reporter, Maya Burry, drove south.
This is about 1 kilometre south of Timaru. To the right of me, I have the lagoon. This is a coastal lagoon, so the beach is to my left. And behind this lagoon, it's an industrial area, so a number of factories. You can probably see some of them puffing out steam and smoke. And in front of me is the freeze works. So this is quite an industrial area, but I'm told it wasn't always like this. I spoke to a local in Timaru who said he used to come and play here, and people did actually used to swim here. So he was, quite surprised to learn that it's considered swimmable now, because when you look at it, it doesn't look too good. The water looks very murky and brown, a lot of kind of green algae hanging around the edges of the lagoon here. But there are quite a lot of birds, in the area as well. And I think part of the problem is the birds. They bring up the E. coli levels in the lagoon.
So you have spoken to people there about whether they would swim in it. Now, I have the advantage that I can see the shot you're talking to us from, and frankly, it looks about as appetising. I can't even think of an analogy, actually. It looks so unappetizing as a swimming prospect. But you've asked locals if they would swim in this lagoon, which is rated swimmable.
That's right, John. And I think what just speaks to how many people don't want to swim in this lagoon is the fact that there's no one here. This is like a desert land in the middle of nowhere with an oasis of water, but it doesn't really look like an oasis. It looks apocalyptic. And so speaking to locals in Timaru today, they said they were very, very surprised to learn that this was now considered a swimmable waterway.
Really? Yeah, I would be surprised that it was swimmable. Really surprised. Why Washdyke?
Would you take your pet there?
No. I don't think I'd take it in any waterways around here. The rivers are terrible.
Well, they'll just change the standards to suit themselves to say that it's now swimmable, when beforehand the older standards it wasn't.
No, it's definitely not something you think of going for a swim, that's for sure.
Well, for those that would like to swim, they're welcome.
Look, as kids we grew up on Washdyke and we used to play down there, so people did swim in it. Nobody ever got sick. Who knows what it's like today?
Oh no, yeah, I wouldn't even swim in the river, mate. And I go out there all the time, so I wouldn't even take my dog out there.
Yeah, I think a lot of ducks and swans and things swim in it. Good luck to them.
So that's what locals in Timaru had to say about the Washdyke lagoon. Obviously they weren't convinced at all that this was a swimmable lagoon. And as you can see, there are a lot of birds around here, and Nick Smith has acknowledged previously in a lecture he gave last year at Lincoln University that the birds are the reason that the E. coli levels are so high and make this this lagoon unswimmable. But obviously it is now considered a swimmable lagoon, so I think a lot of locals are wondering what's changed here.
Maya Burry, what does the Environment Minister Nick Smith say about all of this? Well, in short, he says Washdyke is something of a freakish anomaly.
I think it's really important to go back to the bigger picture of how we have graded lakes and rivers around New Zealand relative to health. Because for our rivers, John, the big issue is E. coli. So if you're under health risk, we need to be really focused. And so that's why on the maps and the most comprehensive information that's ever been published on swimmability of our waterways, the 45,000 kilometres of rivers is all on the basis of E. coli.
Right.
Now, when it comes to lakes, the problem is with respect to toxic algae. And so we also have a grading all the way from excellent to good to fair to poor, and that is based on all the lakes on the basics of the level of algae. Now, if you take New Zealand's 800 lakes, and that involves 9,000 kilometres of lake margins, that's all recorded and reported, out of those 800, there is 3 in which have an E. coli problem. The other 2 are already in a poor category because of their levels of toxic algae.
Okay.
And so what you've done is out of 9,000 kilometres, you're focused in on 3 kilometres, and the site quite clearly puts a warning sign and says you shouldn't swim there because it's got elevated E. coli.
Okay, except what we're speaking to is a sense of confusion. I spoke to the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment last week, Jan Wright, who was confused. Forest and bird are confused. Fish and game are confused. Everyone is confused, and this is the universal in the particular. This is an example of it. And what makes it even more confusing is I have Environment Canterbury's report on Washdyke. There are tributaries that feed Washdyke. One of them, and I quote, brings in a considerable amount of stormwater. So you say it's birds. Actually, that tributary runs through farmland, semi-industrial, industrial, lifestyle blocks. And so, you know, isn't it smoke and mirrors or shit and mirrors or something?
No, this is the first time that we've ever published a consistent record of, for all our lakes and all our rivers across New Zealand, and that's 54,000 kilometres of them, consistent information on, for rivers, their E. coli levels, and for lakes, their toxic algae levels. Now, it's causing some really good debates, which I want and welcome if we are going to focus on doing it better. The problem to date is we've spent more time between town and country arguing, or farmers and industry and sewerage and the sort of bird arguments. We've spent more time on that than cleaning them up because everybody's disputed the information.
Okay, let's try and drill down to what you're trying to achieve. There are 45,000 kilometres of rivers in New Zealand, right?
Yes.
What do you want them to look like by 2040?
Well, at the moment, there is 72% of them of which I would be comfortable in taking my kids and my family for a swim.
Right.
Without having to go look at some website, just with common sense.
Okay, so what do you want by 2040?
And by 2040, I want that to be 90%.
So if we take 90%, that still leaves what, 4,000 K of rivers in the 10%?
That's right. Actually, I can give you the exact number, about 5,200.
Right. So that's not a really high bar, is it? Because
Wait
a sec. No, well, hold on a sec. What you and I know is that those rivers, that 5,000 K, more or less, is disproportionately likely to be where people swim. It's disproportionately likely to be close to cities. It's disproportionately likely to be close to the coastline. In other words, you've got a whole lot of credit for rivers in the high country, for rivers in national parks that were never going to be polluted anyway.
No, but what this plan sets out is that over the next 23 years, we need to get 10,000 kilometres of river, or about 20%, out of the unswimmable category and into a place where I'd be comfortable to take my kids for a swim. And then the second thing is that we've got to take 26,000 kilometres and get them up a category, so that if you were in the good category, get it up to excellent. If you were in fair, get it into the good. Now, the water quality that if we achieve this plan in 2040 will be better at any time that we've had in New Zealand since World War II.
Compared to what I'm... Because you keep saying World War II.
Yes,
what's the measure? You telling me?
Yeah. Because I tell you, that's a really good question. I'd love to explain that.
Yeah, because I keep hearing that and I keep thinking, what on earth is the measure? So you're talking about 1945. You're going to say that by 2040, rivers in New Zealand will be overall of a better quality than they were in 1945.
That's correct. And I tell you what I base that on.
What's your measure?
What we've developed with the Ministry for the Environment is a model in which we put in different types of land use, different types of outlets involving pollutants going to our waterways.
So this is based on a model. Is it based on actual water readings from 1945?
But of course there wasn't readings done in 1945 to this level of accuracy. But what we are able to do is, because principally what has happened over the post-World War II period is that we have cleared substantial areas of country. We've created very large urban areas. Many of those have had substandard sewage systems. And so based on good quality scientific advice, you can go back and say, well, if the land use was like this, if there wasn't, 500,000 people living there, if there wasn't these levels of industrial activities, what would the water quality have been then? And that's where this plan's very ambitious, John.
Yeah, okay. Very ambitious and confusing. Do you think people understand this?
No. I totally accept that it is complex And the easy choice, I remember the advice I got when I first became Environment Minister, and there's a lovely old guy who used to work in the Ministry for the Environment, and he said to me, Nick, the first thing, this water quality stuff, it's really complicated. Secondly, it takes a long time to get results. Thirdly, no matter what you do, you will be assigned the role of being the polluter because the soundbite of the opposition will always nail you. And my best advice to you is for you to do nothing and just blame the regional councils. Now, I didn't come to Parliament to be a minister to do nothing. I came to make a difference. This plan is going to make our waterways a lot cleaner, and that's why I'm proud of it.
Nick Smith, Environment Minister.